Thank you guys for having us today. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. I live in Texas. Our board of directors are nationwide. And I just want to kind of give you a little background about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and really about the foundation that God has laid for us in what we're doing. And so much of what the previous the doctor that just spoke resonated with me in terms of Jesus' blood and what that means to us and how passionate I am about this. So I am a pharmacist. I quit my job in September of 2020. I was driving home from work on September 9th of 2020, and the Lord said, "You're out." Like I heard it clear as day, and I knew exactly what it meant. It wasn't something that I had been contemplating, but I thought, okay, I already knew I couldn't give the shot to somebody. I knew that I could not potentially hurt somebody in that way. I'd done the research, and I was very uncomfortable with that situation. And so what happened was I drove home. I got home. My husband was folding clothes, and we were talking about the day, and I didn't say I think God just talked to me. Instead, I just said, I'm getting really uncomfortable about what's about to be asked of me. And what he immediately said, like there was no hesitation. He said, well, you need to quit and we'll make it work. That's not how we work in my house. So, I mean, because I'm walking away from a healthy six-figure salary, and we plan, we do things. We don't go on the fly. And 2 weeks later, I was unemployed. And I had been doing a lot of holistic stuff for many, many years. I woke up about 10 years into my practice, realizing that I was working for the beast, essentially. But what do you do with a pharmacy degree other than work for the beast? So I started educating myself in other ways. It's one of the reasons we have dairy cows. I hand milk. I grind my own wheat. I walk the walk. And so I thought when I quit that I was going to be helping people. And that's what I do that. I spend a lot of time helping people find their way outside of Western medicine as much as possible. But that's what I thought God was going to have me do, like full time. And in January of 21, so this is like 5 months later, I woke up early one morning. I was laying there in my quiet time, and God said, if you have no country, you'll have no business. And I was like, so now what am I supposed to do? And so I took a Constitution class. And then I ended up teaching Constitution classes. And then I started teaching biblical citizenship classes. If you've heard of Rick Green and Patriot Academy, I was working through that. Well, during that time, then I found out, and all of this plays a huge role in the formation of what has happened. But during that time, I found out that there was no precinct chair in my precinct and never had been. So I ended up becoming a precinct chair. And I was like, okay, God, my cup is now very full. My plate is full. My platter is full. And so I'm doing, now I'm a precinct chair. I'm teaching Constitution classes. I'm helping people get well and healthy. And then in May of 21, again, quiet time, God says, I woke up early one morning. The first thing he said, he's very loud in the morning for me. He said, I need for you to preserve the blood. And I said, I am. I've been kicked off Twitter. I've quit my job. I'm still, part of me is still permanently banned on Twitter. But I'm doing all the things. And I knew exactly what he was saying, but I was kind of in denial because it was a overwhelming thing to think about what he was asking me to do. I was like, I am a pharmacist. I don't know the blood. I don't know blood that well, you know? And so from May to September of 21, like we literally had this dialogue going back and forth. And I'm like, I am here for the person that's going to do this. Where are they? You know, I will be their right-hand person. I am here for them. And it wasn't happening. And then in September of 21, he and I are having this conversation. And I'm like, okay, why is nobody doing this? Like I was literally just having this conversation. Why is nobody doing this? And I felt him go like this. And he said, because you're not. And I said, but why are you choosing me? And I get teary-eyed every time because I'm like, you know, I don't have money. I don't have the face. I don't have following. I've been kicked off Twitter. Certainly don't have the following. You know, all the things. I was like, I don't have anything. And he said, that's exactly why I chose you. Because if it was about any of that, it would have been about them and not about me. And we are here to protect and preserve the blood of Christ that runs through each one of us. So that started a really interesting process when I finally said yes, because I was like, okay, I'll say yes, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. So I reached out to a group of friends, and I said, is anybody interested in helping me? And they're like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, we're going to preserve the blood of Christ. So no small feat here, right? So I had 7 precious people. 2 of them are in the room today. I had 7 precious people step forward and say, I'll help you. And then they were like, well, what do we do? And I was like, heck if I know. So from September until November of 21, we were kind of in a holding pattern, like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. We have to wait and see. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Weston A. Price. I was at a Weston A. Price conference that November, and I had come in late on the second day, and I missed the first session, so I was walking around in the exhibitor hall, and I wasn't even thinking about what I was, the blood thing. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just there for the conference. And through a series of events, God just downloaded everything. And he was like, you are not to be involved in the 501c3. You are to be a cooperative. It is going to be all, it's not for profit. That I already knew. We had our name. It was blessed by his blood. It's we're modeled after John 15:13. You know, no man has greater love than to give his life for his friends. We're not asking anybody to give their life, just a pint of blood, a little bit of time. And interestingly, I live in Texas, and we're like, you're to be based out of Minnesota. And I was like, I don't even know anybody in Minnesota. So, but the reason for that, we are based out of Minnesota. The reason for that is because Minnesota, interestingly enough, even though it is quite a liberal state, they have extremely protective laws for natural health, and they have extremely protective laws for cooperatives. Makes sense now. So we had to find a lawyer out of Minnesota, which took a long time because a lot of lawyers are afraid, to buck the system. And we finally found one. It took me 5 lawyers to find one. And we were up and running. I mean, you guys have no idea the amount, the thousands of hours, I'll say cumulatively, that we have spent getting things up and running. But in May, was it May of 23 that we did our March? In March of 23, we did our first match for a high-risk birth mom. And let me tell you, that was very satisfying. And every time we do a match, and Kim is going to talk about what that matching process looks like, we know that we are helping somebody who is as convicted as we are to preserve the blood of Christ. And not just that, but that the additional aspect of this is the aspect of medical freedom. and that's the right to choose what goes into your body. And I'm extremely passionate about that, and we will talk more about that here after Kim has talked about what we're doing in terms of helping preserve the right to choose medical freedom-wise what goes into your body. So we are there are a couple organizations that are like us. We are the only faith-based one, and we are the only not-for-profit. I mean, when I say not-for-profit, we are $25 a year annually, and kids under 18, as well as adults with disabilities, meaning that they need another adult in their care, to care for them. Kids and those adults are free. So we're literally a 3 cups of coffee a year type of membership. And we operate, all of our members are member owners, meaning you guys have full say in what we do. We have an annual meeting. We have our 2nd annual meeting coming up here in a couple months. And we want you guys to grow us. And what that looks like is every member has their own referral number. And you know, like after the last 5 years, you know who your people are, right? You share with your people. And this is how we grow our people, so that when we need blood in your area, we can find them very easily. And it is a beautiful thing when we do a match. I mean, some of the stories we have, and I hopefully Kim will share just a few of the stories that we've been privileged to be a part of. So, ready to talk?
Thank you. As she mentioned, my name's Kim. I feel so blessed because, as Liz mentioned, the way God called all this together and orchestrated it, to have been working in critical care as a manager and have the medical background that I do, and how it is able to play into this mission that we were given has just been wonderful. When I got tired of critical care and wanted to see my son grow up, I became an employee health manager. So I was one of those nurses. I could talk any nurse into getting a shot. I'm ashamed of that now. We didn't know any better. We didn't know what we didn't know. But we were indoctrinated by the system. And I kind of want to take a side note here. I've talked to several of you this morning. Several people have had to take the COVID injection. They had to take it for jobs. They had to take it for all kinds of reasons. So that's not what this is about. Even if you've had the shot, there are ways to detoxify and cleanse your body. The brochures in your chairs have some wonderful information there. You might check those out. There's some other vendors and things like that. We also have lists of protocols that you might be interested in. So even if you've had to take the COVID injection, please stop by, consider making your body as healthy as possible and mitigating those types of effects. Okay? You may wonder, on the title of our slide, it says it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. Well, we know what that means biblically, but have you thought about it when it comes to needing blood? I can't tell you how many members call us up and say, it's Monday morning, I'm having surgery this Thursday, can you help me find some blood? And she goes, I never even thought about it until I had to sign that paper that says I would accept a blood transfusion. So don't wait until then. Think about it now. What would happen if you need a blood transfusion? And that's exactly what we're here to do, is help you think through that process and be ready. Okay? The first thing that I'd like to let you know is that it takes blood banks several days to process blood. They test it for infectious diseases. They need to process it to get it ready to be on the shelf and get ready for a transfusion. So if you cut your arm off, to me, that's a real medical emergency. If you cut your arm off, we can't help in that situation. Now, we do have members that will call us and say, I'm in the emergency room, I need some blood. They tell me I need it right now. Well, being a nurse, my first question is, what's your hemoglobin and what's the source of the bleeding? Because you may have some time. There may be things that the doctors can prescribe. There's medications that stimulate red blood cell production. There's iron infusions. There's different things like that. And we've used those successfully with those suggestions. That members have done that and bought us a little bit of time where we could get donors and get the blood processed for that member. But for the most part, we do what's called directed donations. You've planned ahead, there's surgery, there's childbirth, like Liz mentioned, just different situations like that where we've got a little bit of time. We'll work with the members to help you figure out which blood bank your hospital is contracted with. Many people ask me, Well, what if the hospitals and the doctors say no, they won't honor your wishes to pick your donors? There's been 2 cases where it was the hospital, but for the most part, it's the blood banks that make that decision. So every contract with a blood bank is with one hospital. So we'll help figure out which blood bank that is, whether or not they do directed donations, and facilitate that process, walk through what you need to know to coordinate that. Okay. Trying to think what else on that. Well, let me tell you a couple stories. So one of our most successful stories was a gentleman that we actually met his parents at Weston A. Price. They were in line with me at lunch, and they had heard us talking about Blessed by His Blood. And they said, hey, our son is in Florida right now. He's got this condition, and he needs some blood. Well, he became one of our members that got the most blood from us. He got 46 units of blood and platelets from us. So from November through July of last year, he discovered some natural healing methods, and I am so happy to say that he was pronounced cured by his doctors. He's needed no blood since last July. But you think of all the potential exposure that gentleman might have gone through. One of our other cases was early on, and we had 2 people needing O-negative blood, which if you're not aware is the hardest to get. They both needed it at the same time. They needed 20 units between them, and it was in LA County. I thought, how are we going to do this? LA, you just assume everybody's, liberal or whatever. But it couldn't have been any more beautiful. It's Cedars-Sinai Hospital and LA Children's Hospital. They were wonderful to work with. We were able to get all the blood that we needed for those 2 people. So that was one of our other success stories. And then the third I'll mention we're in the process of doing right now. I do want to say we've helped 34 people so far. We've had 140 donors donate to all those people. And we actually this year started off with a bang for many good reasons. We have 10 open cases right now. We just finished January. We've got 10 people that we're helping get blood. And one of them is a 2-month-old. She will be having heart surgery on February 19th, I believe. So anyway, we're getting blood for her too. So many, many situations. I just love meeting the members on the phone and having conversations. I learned so much from all of our members. There was something else I was going to say. Give me just one moment. I guess that was it on that part. One of the ways that you can help us, we ask, our application process is very thorough. So even the Red Cross doesn't ask as many questions as we do. But we want to be as careful as we can so that we've got the right donors in our pool. And so the extensive application process. Liz mentioned when you know people that have not received the COVID injection, you can become a member, okay? And you will receive an electronic membership referral link. That's how you share best about us, by telling other people, because that basically is screening them for us, okay? I don't have to screen them over the phone. They don't have to give us proof or anything like that. If their injection status, they can just share their link, and that makes it easy on everybody, okay? And then the third thing I think that you had already mentioned too was just the price of membership. Again, $25 for adults, and kids under 18 and dependent children are for free. Okay, I think Liz is going to finish up.
So the rest, this is the rest of the story. Becoming politically active, to be clear, I mean, like I've always voted. I don't think I've ever missed any kind of election, no matter how big or small. I've always voted. But in terms of stepping in and doing the work politically, that was not something that I ever felt I was called to do. And so in January of 23, once again, in the morning, God said, and I live in Texas, by the way, God said, go to Austin. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I went to Austin, and he said, you've got to protect the blood, not just preserve the blood. You have to protect the blood. And so I literally just started walking around the Capitol trying to figure out what to do and what I was supposed to do. And in addition to praying, which is always very important whenever you go to the Capitol because it is a cesspool, not just in Texas, but in other places too. The process of legislation is not easy. And what I figured out that we needed to do was start protecting and preserving the right to choose whose blood you receive. That doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it actually is, because what you don't realize is that the blood banks are quietly trying to turn this right off. And they are doing it in multiple ways. They are dissuading people, like verbally. They will verbally dissuade you from wanting to do this. They will attempt to charge you a lot of money for if you want to do it, above and beyond what it would cost if you had anonymous donor blood, or they will outright tell you no. And from my point of view, if you have a corporation, and you need to understand that, like, and I'll just say, I mean, it's not just Red Cross, it's every blood bank that you have that's out there that's a not-for-profit. Blood banks are, this blood is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the United States supplies 70% of exported blood. So when you donate blood, you are not necessarily donating for your community. Only about 20% of what you donate actually stays in your community. The rest of it is sold either overseas, or is sold to big pharma, or it's sold to research. And you need to understand too that a lot of the biologics that are being made right now have a blood component, as well as like IVIG, which a lot of pregnant women, or they say they need, and there are other conditions as well. And back to my pharmacy days, I mean, I spent 12 years in specialty pharmacy, and I always thought it was very interesting, like, because we did a lot of work with IVIG, and IVIG was like calling the stock market. We would call and say, what's it cost today? I had no idea what that meant was, what is blood going for today? Or it's IVIG is a blood component, but it was like, what's it going for today? I mean, it would be like, all right, today it's $1,200. Today it's $1,400. I mean, it's like, it literally was like the stock market. And we would call and ask and be like, okay, we'll take 3 units or however many units we needed for that day. It makes perfect sense to me now. But the point of all this is when you have a corporation, i.e. the blood centers, they're contracted with the hospitals and the transfusion centers. They have a contract. They have, if they say, nope, we're not doing this anymore, then what? Basically, you have a corporation practicing medicine, first of all, and they're coming between the doctor and the patient's right to choose what's best for the patient. And people don't know this. I didn't know this until I started prowling the halls of Austin. Well, what happened is I found a senator in Austin who was willing to write a bill for me. So I wrote a bill, and I said, would you be interested in this? They modified it slightly, but I was like, great. So I became like a capital junkie. It's about, I think, Austin is about 4.5 hours from my house. I spent a lot of time in Austin in 2023. I didn't even start until March. And if anybody has ever done any work in legislation before, you know this is a long process. This is not something that you like just jump in and start doing. So those of you, like you're nodding your head, you'll understand this. I started in January. In March, I introduced a bill. Our legislative session ended in June. I got the bill in there. It was SB 1584. That tells you it was an older, it was a bill that was not a baby bill. It's number 1584. It was late in the game, right? And for all of that, what God did, it did not pass, but it didn't not pass for lack of failure. It didn't pass because we ran out of time. But what it did do is we made it through. I mean, like there's 9 steps that a bill has to go through. If everything is perfect, there's 9 steps it has to go to. Once it gets through those 9 steps, then the governor can sign it into a law. We made it to the 8th step. And so Texas does a legislative session every other year. So we're working on it again this year. This year I have 2 senators on the bill, and we're stepping into it again. But guess what? We started working on this in other states too. We have a bill in Wyoming right now that just passed in the House and just went on to the Senate. We are talking to senators and representatives who are interested in using a similar bill in Iowa, in Maryland, in Kentucky, in Tennessee. I mean, there are other states involved now. And this is where we are, but we can't do this alone. You know, I mean, there's only one of me. And I have another board member who is also working on this legislatively, but we need other people to step up. And like Kim had our pamphlet, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. That is all about legislation, like what we need to do. And to be clear, the legislation is not about who got the shot or not. What this is about medical freedom and the right to choose whose blood you receive. And they cannot take that right away from us. They can't force us to use something that we don't want in our body. And everybody, bipartisan, it doesn't matter who you are, you should want the freshest, cleanest blood that you can get. And I'll tell you, how much more time do I have? Okay. The freshest, cleanest blood is what you want. Because if you need blood, you're in a healing crisis. And if you get blood from just what's on the shelf, you are going to get, it'll match for you, but you're going to get the oldest blood that they have. You're not going to get the freshest blood. The oldest blood has the least amount of active hemoglobin in it. And what does that mean? That means blood is not well oxygenated. And so what do you need when you're healing? Correct. So you want as clean, fresh blood as you're going to get. And I'll tell you something else too. When you go to different parts of the town, you're going to see blood donation centers. There are places that pay for blood donation centers, and there are documentaries that actually talk about this. And a lot of the blood that is in the system has other things in it that you may not want in your body, including illicit drugs, including the Red Cross says they test for 12 different viruses, and that's it. I mean, what about everything else, right? We have 2 little girls that we have been working with. They are beta thalassemia major kids. That means they require a blood transfusion every single month for their life because their body just does not produce hemoglobin, just doesn't. And these little girls, their hematologist wrote a letter to the Red Cross, our blood donation center in our area, and said these girls require directed donors because we need the cleanest blood that they have and it needs to be fresh. They were denied. Do you understand? You understand how important that is? So they did find a workaround by stepping outside of the system. But for 2 months, those girls had to get anonymous blood until they could figure the workaround. Now, what happened was this blood center down in Texas, they found out about our legislation. And they made a public statement that, remember, we started the legislation in March of 23. In April, they posted on their website that they were no longer honoring directed donations. They're contracted with over 200 hospitals in North Texas. Do you think that's not intentional? And when our senator called and had a direct contact with the CEO of that particular organization, they could not give a good reason why. And I can tell you the reason why. It's because of profit. And whenever you give a directed donation, it takes away their right to say, hey, that is some high quality blood that we could make premium money for, because blood is graded. It's graded and sold. So if you have good blood, that blood will fetch a higher number. Again, if you think about the IVIG story I was telling you about, we're like, well, today it's $1,400, tomorrow it's $1,200, whatever. That's what I'm talking about. So this is what we're up against, and we need everybody involved in this. And yes, it's a little known area of medical freedom, but it's incredibly important. And God's name is woven into our DNA, and I don't believe that that's by accident. And we just have to fight the good fight. So, yeah. Yep. So that's it.